Hi there, and welcome back to Source Song Festival's 8th season. On Monday night, you've already heard 4 new premieres of our new poet in residence, Joyce Sutphen, and tonight we'll hear 4 more world premieres.
These performances by artists in the Min Duo program were recorded remotely from around the world. They serve as a reminder that although this past year has brought so much difficulty and isolation, songs have the unique ability to connect us to each other, whether in the same room or across the country.
The composers in our Min Song program connected via the process of building this song through the poems they selected and meeting the duos of the performers that would be premiering these songs. All 4 brand new songs tonight.
If you missed Monday's event, which had 4 other premieres, never fear. You can access it anytime on our website, sourcesongfestival.org, where you can also make a donation in any amount to show your support for these resilient artists.
Now please enjoy the continuation of meeting Joyce Sutphen.
Hi, I'm Anna George Meek, and I'm a poet, a mezzo-soprano, and a board member of Source Song Festival. And I'm here with Minnesota Poet Laureate and friend Joyce Sutphen, who is also Poet Laureate of the 2021 Source Song Festival. She is Professor Emeritus of Gustavus Adolphus. And her latest book, it's your latest book, right?
Yeah.
Carrying Water from the Field is a new and selected collection from which the 2021 participants will be drawing for their art song texts. So welcome, Joyce.
Nice to be here, Anna. You know, that old famous thing about poetry is about 3 things, and death is always one of them.
I've never heard that, but oh wow, nailed it. Yeah, that's us as poets.
Yeah. I mean, you know, just think I can think. I mean, Shakespeare's sonnets aren't really love poems, particularly. They're about death and time, changing things, wanting the moment to really stay, that there wouldn't be any autumn, that, you know, the leaves wouldn't turn yellow and gold, and, you know, bare ruined choirs, just bemoaning that and trying to hold it back, you know. I mean, I think that is the poet's job in some ways, is just to stop time, preserve, keep, store what is beautiful and loved, and make another place for that. And so in the sonnets you just see one sonnet after another, kind of making that argument, that his project in the sonnets by the end of like about 120 of the sonnets is to say that he'll just put it, he'll carry it away through whatever is going to happen next to him, death or whatever. But we don't know. If we did, just as we don't know who those sonnets were too. It's just
There's no forwarding address.
no forwarding. Oh, that's great. We can use that line now.
Yeah,
we've got it.
The Singers Project isn't all that different, really. And I think about the mortality that's inherent in both singing and writing poetry, in trying to stave off silence, death, and make something of mortality. I think of breath, the project of breathing. Breathing out is an essential part of singing, yeah. And it's the last act we'll ever do. On the, in our mortal coil.
You still shall live so long as men have breath. Oh wait.
Yes. The Shakespeare.
I mean, there's all kinds of lines about breath, and this gives breath to thee.
I think of like the line in a poem and the white space, the blank space. You're always at risk of entering silence in a poem. And that's true of breath and breathing and singing too. You're always at risk of entering silence, of that being the last breath. But no, you breathe again. No, there is another line of poetry. There's quite a bit of kinship between poetry.
Do you know what that bird is?
Is that, I do. Is that cardinal? It is, I got it right. Yeah! I keep trying to learn, and it's so hard to...
Isn't that, I mean, they really...
they're so showy.
Oh, I know.
They're divas. Cardinals are divas.
Yeah.
And don't they know it? They've got that gorgeous red cape.
I know.
So...
Death Incorporated is one in a long series of, I mean, I've written lots of poems about death. The first one was called Death Becomes Me, and when I sent it off to Poetry Magazine, he took it. And it was, I think, the first poem that Poetry took, and this is kind of another interesting one, because, well, you'll see, this is longer than usual in my later poems. Death Incorporated. Without his scythe and crooked knife, he's simply an ordinary guy. You see him at the bus stop, and he's reading a folded newspaper, or he's in the car next to you on the freeway. First he passes you, and then you pass him. It goes on like that for a long time. But though you glance over at him, he never looks back at you, which it turns out is a good thing. All the while you've been waiting for the carriage to stop kindly at your door. The carriage that would take you past the schoolyard and the fields, accompanied by the gentle clip-clop of horses' hooves. But suddenly you realize he might be driving an 18-wheeler high on meth, tires screeching. Yes, it could happen like that, but it's just as likely he might be the shadow of a tree you planted years ago falling across the green lawn.
Oh, wow.
You know, Robert Frost said, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. And don't you think you don't want to know what you're going to end with. And you're always just trusting and waiting and like kind of walking on air, because you just want something to just come rushing through there. And that's when you know the poem is finished. You might still revise it, and now I really do, but once I could feel the combination of the shadow and the tree falling, I knew that the poem had a wholeness to it.
And speaking of tonality and surprise, of course, there's the wit of Emily Dickinson all through the poem. And
yeah, Emily's heavy there.
Yeah.
Yes. If Emily can be heavy, she can be.
She can be.
She can be an 18-wheeler. Rodin on film. And, and Ekphrastic poems. This is that I guess translates talking picture, and I love writing Ekphrastic poems and using it as an exercise in class, and going to an art museum and just telling students to just find a painting you love or a sculpture and just write about it. And so that's what I was doing, only I don't usually write about a film, but I saw the film that will be described in the poem, and I think I just went back to the flat and wrote this. Rodin on film. Rodin is at the top of the stairs, like a sculpted man. He stands still until, on command, he comes down, 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 as if descending a throne. Pygmalion-like, he is thinking of flesh turning to stone, stone turning to bone, moment without movement, marble into motion. Rodin works his hammer and chisel, blinks away stone with a flickering eye, and steps back, rough flaked with marble, to turn the torso on its wooden pedestal, wedge his chisel, strike, turn it again, and strike another blow. He does these things for the camera. He already knows how it will work, how it will make his body into flat, dead air, and then let it pretend it is heavy with life. So I am not sure about the ending there. I know what I intended, and I sometimes I think that I don't worry about the sense as much as I just follow what word was brushing up against the one before it. I mean, so, and I made a little error there when I said movement with. I started instead of moment without movement, marble into motion. So there were lots of M's there, lots of alliteration, and I think I use alliteration quite a bit in my early work. That I just sort of worked intuitively, and sound was probably my companion more than anything. It's what made it a poem mine, if the sound was right.
The thing about sound and that beautiful phrase you just said, how one word brushes up against another, it's very visceral. It's processed through the body, not intellectually, but
yeah,
the body takes it in first.
Yeah, and yeah, sometimes just you get the right first line, and everything does sort of unravel or kind of thread out from there.
Rodin is at the top of the stairs like a sculpted man. He stands still until on command he comes down, 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 as if descending Pygmalion-like, he is thinking of flesh turning to stone, stone turning to bone, moment without movement, marble into motion. his hammer and chisel, blinks away stone with a flickering eye, and steps back to turn the torso on its wooden pedestal. Wedge his chisel strike, turn it again and strike another blow. He does these things for the camera. He already knows how it will work. How it will make his body into flatterer, and then let it pretend it is heavy with
Shape is the interesting thing. It's related to form, shape. I mean, kind of like another way of looking at
I'm
it.
curious about when poems become the text for song, is you don't have the visual aspect. It changes shape. That can feel strange. You lose line breaks often. You lose, sometimes you lose white space. I mean, it depends on how the composer wants to use the language, but it's just, I don't know, a stray comment about thinking about shape and
Well, I like the way you said it changes shape. That's pretty cool, you know? I mean, it's like taking the mango juice and pouring it from the pitcher into the glass.
Yeah. And still mango juice, but it might taste a little different than if you drink it out of a glass than if you drink it out of the pitcher.
Yeah. Now finally a love song. That is a sonnet, and I should say something about this sonnet because I love the form. I feel that it's the ideal length for a poem. I don't, a long poem, if that's what they're supposed to be, I'll appreciate that. But, in general, I love this kind of a shape because it's enough to present an idea, elaborate on it, maybe transform it, oppose it, do something, but make that little turn and hand something over to you. And
it's a marvel of compression. It is. You were talking about the rhetoric of a previous poem. A sonnet has its rhetoric built right into its architecture, whether you're talking about a Spenserian or Shakespearean or Petrarchan sonnet. Like the rhetoric is different for each one, and I do not envy composers trying to set a sonnet, which is such a tightly built little piece of, architecture. It's really
and usually mine wouldn't be as much of a challenge because I often just use the blank a blank verse line, which is 10 syllables roughly in iambic pentameter. And I have, just lots of ways that I change that around and like have the stanzas arranged. But this one is Shakespearean or English in that it's 3 quatrains and a couplet. One thing with this particular poem is it has the rhyme system of Shakespeare's sonnets. And if you're lost, if I was just playing, if we were just in the car driving and I was attempting to recite that poem, I would go back and I would listen to the word that the line that I'm missing right then is I'm sure singers must do this all the time with rhymed songs. That there has to be a word that rhymes with that word, and so
I as a singer, I also think about mouthfeel. I don't know if the singers and the participants also do this as well, but it's one of the ways in which I memorize text when I'm singing.
Really?
Yeah, the mouthfeel, and especially if you're singing in a language you don't know. Do you ever do that with poems that you memorize?
That's really an interesting idea.
It's like playing violin, same issue, especially with, arthritis in the hands. You want it to be automatic and come automatically, and we forget how our mouths and the muscles, that's all an instrument. Especially for singers.
Right.
But for poets too.
Yeah.
We forget how much of it an instrument that is until something happens.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm sort of in the place with the poet, thinking about what word should come next. It's also much more declarative than I usually am in poems about relationships, and so it's kind of the title is appropriate. Now, finally, a love song. Now, finally, I'll write you a love song, or at least something that we're both in, saying things that I should have said long ago, and you'll be happy to hear them. Now, finally, I'll say what a wonder you are, and you'll wonder why I never told you that before, and I'll ask whether we could make a life together under the circumstances which seem to have changed since yesterday and every day since we met each other long ago, distance hard to measure, 2 lives rearranged. And finally, I know what we should do. I know this song. I'll sing it to you. the last poem that was chosen is the second last poem in the entire book, in the news section. And
what a spread! I mean,
I know
chose
it's
really,
perfect. They're just, talented at everything, even choosing the right kind of poems.
Okay.
I'll just say that it's a little bit relying again on sort of a naphra or repetition. Your name, which is in the title, so then really there are 6 times I use your name, and every time it's used, it's sort of in a slightly different grammatical position. Sometimes it's the direct object, and sometimes it's your name is it's more declarative. Your name. One day when you were no longer there, I forgot to say your name. I say it now. Your name is more beautiful than the sky at dawn. The bowl of it fills up with colors only air can hold. I hear your name on the prairie, coming from beyond the farthest field, the last line of trees. Your name is the only thing that can prove that the ear can hear beyond the grave. I say your name, and you answer with a silence that I take for a love that I carry all the way to the horizon.
It is a very musical poem, less so, I think, in things like alliteration, but more so in the syntax and the structure of the sentences, and in the anaphora that you were talking about.
Yeah, I have at least 3 dashes in here, which can be a verboten thing, but
Dickinson owns the dash.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for the composers about how they think about setting syntax, and this is one of the more syntactically, grammatically sophisticated, difficult poems of the 8 that were chosen, and I'm curious to see what the composer does with some of these sentences. So.
Yeah, me too.
One day
Is there anything you're hoping for from listening to the pieces that will come out of the texts?
I've never had the chance to kind of hear and interact with people who are using things, something I've put together, structured, chosen the words for, I've had songs that were composed using poems, but it's different to have met everyone virtually and to think of where the place that they were, I'd love to ask them each what attracted them to that poem. And it is amazing how it mostly you write because that's what you just are meant to do, and you love it, but you do love it when someone picks something and you know that they're going to intimately know that thing in the way that you did when you were putting each word in.
Joyce, thank you so much for this interview and for being Poet Laureate of Minnesota, and especially for being Poet Laureate of the 2021 Source Song Festival.
And thank you for coming out and enjoying the beautiful sunny summer day.